The field of psychiatry has undergone a complete change. When I first went into it, a psychiatrist was seen as sort of an odd person who wasn't a real doctor. He was, you know, a head doctor or something like that. There was quite a bit of like prejudice. And nowadays, thanks to all of the modern neuroscience technology, psychiatry has become a really scientific profession. And a number of my medical colleagues told me they were jealous because their field hasn't changed anything like psychiatry has. In neuroimaging, we're now able to look at individual cells and individual cell networks. There's a type of bacteria that makes proteins that when you shine light on them, they light up. And when you insert those proteins into the brain, into specific nerves and nerve tracts, you can actually see them in color. You know, and that's just totally thrilling to be able to do stuff like that. We used to think that genetics was based on DNA, desoxyribonucleic acid. We've learned that's not true at all. DNA is simply a storage place for the genes. The activity is happening in the RNA, which we thought previously was just simply something that carried information from the DNA to proteins, and that's how we behaved. Since it's RNA, it's open to the impact of the environment. So there's this whole new field now called epigenetics, which has to do with the impact of the environment on the genetics and genetic change that does not depend on the DNA. What the brain processes is environment. The brain processes experience. And we found that people with autism continue to learn over the entire life cycle. We know that there are two periods where they learn more, for example, early childhood, and then again around age 5 or 6, and then again during adolescence. But we found that even seniors have the capability of learning and their brain changes, so it's a very positive outlook. Brain plasticity means that, well, the brain is plastic, which means it changes depending on the environment that you're in. You know, you and I our brain works quite differently when we're, say, listening to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony versus when we're, you know, multiplying 21 times 32. The two first children that I saw with autism, one of them got early intervention, the applied behavior analysis, and one of them did not. The one that got the applied behavior analysis and speech-language training, that young man has graduated high school, he's graduated college, he has a master's degree, he works, he pays taxes. The other young man had the misfortune to grow up in rural Oahu, where there were no services. That young man did not finish the 6th grade. He's now in permanent residential care, and he's going to cost us money for the next 50 years. You know, it's a very dramatic difference. We can't just let them graduate high school and then suddenly they're graduates. They have to continue to use their brain. They have to be involved in activity in the community. If you simply let them stay at home, their brain rapidly becomes inactive and they become a whole lot more of a management problem. First, autism is brand new, and it takes government a while. You know, government doesn't immediately get in there. Government it takes a while. But also we have in government, and it's showing up a lot currently, a lot of people that don't think that this kind of intervention is worth it. They think that families need to pay for themselves. Back in the 1950s, we didn't know that autism existed. We really only became aware that autism existed in the 1990s, when there was this increasing number of odd people that we hadn't seen before. The two young people I told you about, I only saw those in the late 1980s. So it's really a very new thing. The medical system is set up to treat illnesses, in other words, to treat categories. And people change from one category to another, and the money isn't there. One of the characteristics of autism in children, the way they think, is they tend to take things literally. They have trouble managing their feelings. They really don't understand a lot of social behavior, smiles, you know. I've had kids complain to me, I'll tell them, Michael, didn't it ever occur to you to look at people? And then Michael will look at me and he looks shocked and he says, Dr. Bill, you have no idea how difficult it is to look people in the face. They smile, they frown, their eye changes, their whole complex. He says, I can't look at people and listen to them at the same time. So anyway, you have a child like that and you put them in school and they're sensitive to noises and they don't know why they're there in the first place and who is the teacher, and unless they're, and the other children know that they're different, so they tend to tease them. And there's just an enormous amount of bullying. It may be well-meaning, but it's still bullying, which these young autistic kids cannot handle. So they really have an enormous amount of stress, which is very much in the post-traumatic stress category. There's a part of the brain called the amygdala, and the amygdala is the part of the brain that helps us to evaluate whether something is safe or dangerous. Loud sounds and things that were not expected get interpreted as danger. So then the amygdala sends a signal, danger. We get a big shot of adrenaline and it's fight or flight. I think one can help train autistic children not to feel so misinterpreted or not to overreact quite so much. There are ways of handling stress, of just learning how to go quiet instead of having to drop to the floor or run. But that takes practice. It's kind of like teaching meditation or something, yeah? It's no longer sufficient simply to learn about diseases and diagnoses and categories. You have to learn about the systems that children grow up in, which are families and schools and communities. And that means that you really need to be good at learning how to listen to mothers and understand families and how to work with schools. There's a professor of law at Boston University who says that one of the things that she thinks that autism might contribute, because children have areas of cognitive strength, they have talents, yeah, is it might help us to tolerate a broader range of what's different. You know, we tend to have very narrow ideas about who's normal and who isn't, and this will give us a little more support for people who are kind of odd but who have talents. And if you look into history, the English have been like that. You know, 18th and 19th century has got all kinds of odd people who are brilliant. One of the problems with autism is that it's not a single condition, it's a group of conditions. So it's now called autism spectrum disorders. And also we're beginning to learn that it's not a condition that just affects the brain. It also affects the immune system. And because of that, you're going to have an increased number of children with allergies and gastrointestinal problems and things like that, that also need to be attended to if you're to provide comprehensive care. One of the wonderful things about all of this new technology is the ability to create environments that are just not a part of regular living, but that help specific parts of the brain to learn better, to grow, to understand. We really don't know the cause of autism, and because it's happening so often, everyone wants to be helpful and come up with different ideas about what causes it. So we have a lot of groups who have different ideas about autism and what causes it and how to deal with it. And one of the things I think that helps is the story of the blind men and the elephant. Of the blind men, that one of them felt the trunk of the elephant and said, oh, and an elephant's like a snake. And another one felt a leg and said, oh no, the elephant is like a tree. And a third felt the body and says, no, you're both wrong, an elephant is like a wall. And each of those men was right in what they saw, but they were all wrong because they didn't see the whole picture. Anyway, autism is an elephant. And I think that if all of us could really understand that, we would pull together and not keep arguing over, is it vaccinations, or is it diet, or is it bad mothering, or whatever else. There are several things to say about the difficulty in continuing to provide services after school. Most societies, when you reach age 21, sometimes before that, you're expected to go to work and play a role in society. And if you can't do that, you're going to have to wind up in some kind of a babysitting arrangement. And many of these folks simply, they're used to mental retardation, or they're used to deafness, blindness, physical handicap, but they're not used to autism. And this is why our kids tend to get undertreated, and why they don't develop as well. One of the things that concerns me the most is that although they're not as good as they might be, early identification and early intervention and school intervention and services, they're all in place and they all work to some degree. But when young people graduate, young people with autism graduate from high school, we really don't have any kind of systematic approach to help them. And that for me is one of the most alarming things going, because that's going to just cost us a lot of money, and it's going to be a major tragedy for some of these talented skills and so forth that could be developed. The most useful thing that parents can do, besides take good care of their kids, is to become advocates for their children. And some of that advocacy means political activism. It's a really good idea to take their child to visit their senator or representative or legislator and point out that untreated autism is expensive. Harvard School of Public Health estimates $3.2 million per adult lifestyle, because they live for 70 years. So it really is an epidemic that's going to turn out to be a huge cash problem.